Can you guys hear me or still no go? All right, cool. If anyone else is still in that old live chat, and there's a few people probably still trying to join that. If anyone else is still in there and you see anyone trying to join, you might just tell them to join the new one. I'm not sure another way to get that message out there. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. The video was working prior to when I started it, and then as soon as I started it, it went away, and then my computer froze, so I had to switch computers. So all fun. Okay. Sorry, I'm just doing a little bit of cleanup, trying to get rid of the other one so people stop trying to join it. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being patient. I don't know what was going on. I mean, I do know what was going on, but no one cares about the details. So, hey, Kathy. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Angel, Sharon, Melissa. I saw all of you jumping on the previous one. So sorry I didn't get a chance to welcome everyone individually before. And yeah, you're right. Alan did have something to do with it. We can blame him. That's funny. All right. I'm going to give it just another 30 seconds to let a few others join that may still be trying to join the previous one. And get back to my normal screens here. Also, you're going to see Steve in the chat section. He's going to help me out. Just try to keep an eye on the comment section because depending on how many people join, which is probably going to be less now since we screwed up the previous one, it can start moving pretty quick. So he's going to help me try to keep an eye on that. And that way, if there's any repeat questions when someone joins late, he can help out. And we can try to keep some of the spam down too. Hopefully that's not an issue though. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I know I've already made everyone waste about 15 minutes here, so we'll go ahead and get started. I mentioned a few things in the description of the video of the live stream that I would talk about if no one had anything to suggest right away. So I'll start with those, but before we do that, just thank you all for not only supporting this particular video and wanting to be part of this, but the whole channel in general. It's been awesome working and engaging with all of you over time. So we've officially been a channel for just a little over a year now. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Appreciate all of you for being here and for your suggestions and positive feedback. And hopefully everyone's learning from one another. So with that being said, again, hi to everyone. There's a lot of names popping up, so I'm not going to go through everyone individually, but just wanted to say hi and let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I wanted to mention, in case anyone had not seen it yet, was about shipping and carrier updates. So many of you probably saw an email from Pirate Ship that came out a couple days ago, I think, just talking about the price of USPS, so the post office, and what their plans are for 2022. As most of us know, they jacked up rates significantly, not only in 2021 in general, but really towards the holidays, which is not that uncommon. But combined with what we're seeing from the post office because of the pandemic and supply chains and delivery issues, it was getting kind of out of hand. So just to give a little perspective, up until this year, 90% of my orders, if not more, I used to ship USPS. It was just cheaper. Sometimes flat rate, but usually just my own boxes. They were just a better rate. About a quarter of the way through, so I would say spring of 2022, complete 180. About 90+% of my orders now ship UPS, just because of the rates. Now, part of that is because of the discounts you get. My website's on Shopify. Depending on the plan you're on, you'll get different rates and different discounts. Some plans, the discounts are great for USPS, some they're better for UPS, and so on. So that's part of it. The cubic pricing with USPS definitely does help. But all that being said, it looks like, and I checked out a few different reports. I obviously don't know for sure. I don't have any like inside man or anything, and I don't work for the company or have any contacts, so I can't confirm any of this. But at least several reports I've seen show discounts from the post office or USPS in several of their different shipping methods. Not all of them. Some of them might stay the same or have even small increases, but it looked like international looked like it was going to have increases. Everywhere else looked like there was going to be a decrease. So hopefully that is true, because when USPS prices are competitive, that means the other two have to stay competitive as well. And especially if you're using cubic pricing on post office, that can really make a big difference. So if you are charging your customer shipping, like a calculated shipping rate on your website, so they fill their cart up and then their whatever the package and total weight of their order, and then they pay the shipping on top, which is what I've done for most of my career. Haven't been doing it recently, partially because of the shipping charges. But in that case, you're going to be passing along better prices to your customers. On the flip side, if you are doing what a lot of people do these days, which is include the price of shipping in your product, or you offer free shipping over a certain amount, and then you eat the rest of that, then it is still helping your customer, but it's also more directly helping you. So hopefully all of this is true and prices come down. Obviously, due to inflation and other things, the rates will generally go up for everything, right? Pretty much every single year, but it looks like they're either not going to go up much or they're actually going to come down in some areas. So hopefully that is true. If I get better updates over time, I will certainly pass that along. But and speaking of which, I don't have to stay on script here. I'm just talking about a few general topics until anyone wants to mention anything in comments. So if you have any questions or anything, just go ahead and throw it out there, and I'll address those. My goal is to specifically address your comments as general discussion. It looks like someone asked that I froze. I didn't see it on my side, so sorry if I froze a little bit. Am I back now? So I am working ad hoc ad lib setup here. I did not mean, I don't normally have the setup I'm doing right now. All my normal gear is like all over the place. It's a mess around here. So I had to be using backup laptops, backup microphones and everything. So, and I'm on Wi-Fi. That's not helping. So, looks like someone had a question about why do I prefer HTTP over other Wicks with 6006? I don't know that that's true anymore. I used HTTP a lot, not just with 6006, but other waxes previously, prior to them going out of business or going away, and now they're back with a different manufacturer that bought out that supply and then is redeveloped them. It's supposedly supposed to be the same HTTP wick. I and a few others that I've talked to have noticed maybe they burn like a tad hotter than they used to. It's pretty minor, but am I breaking up again, really? Well, I'm going to keep going. If it gets too bad, just let me know. So I don't know that I necessarily say that I prefer HTTP Wicks over 6006, but I did use them in a good portion of them early on. But I also like Premier 700 Wicks in 6006, and actually, depending on the size of your jar, zinc core wicks work pretty well too. Now, a lot of people don't want to use those because sometimes customers they're worried that customers might question that metal core and think it might be lead or something. I've never really had that be an issue, but to be honest, I don't really use those wicks at all anymore. Although there are some advantages to them, But I also don't use 6006 too much anymore either. I still have candles made with them. A couple reasons for that. I was able to get better deals on some other waxes, just closer and working with some manufacturers. But also 6006 is a really, really good wax in certain jars, but it doesn't, in some jars, if many of you've noticed, if you use 6006, it can be kind of tricky to wick it. So I don't know. I felt like it was limiting me a little bit. So I do use 6006. I use a ProBlend 600, which if anyone's using Joy Wax, tomato, and then I use a 3022 wax from a company called Claris. So I feel like I use a lot of different wicks and waxes, but HDP and Premier 700s tend to work in a lot of different waxes. And so that's one of the reasons I talk about them so much, is they're a good wick for a lot of applications. You might find better wicks specifically for you, but overall, they do the job really well in a lot of different waxes. Okay, so let's see. The next question I got was, where do I get those white wick holders? So you guys probably seen a lot of my videos. I've got those like X looking wick holders. The first thing I would say is there's a lot of good wick holders out there. Design House and Wicket make some that really cool ones that are wood. There's some members of the Facebook group that sell some as well that are good. There's a lot. I've used a lot of different ones. The reason I use those ones more than anything is I have a ton of them. I make hundreds of candles a day and sometimes thousands a week, and I have hundreds of those wick holders. So that's why I use those the most. As far as where I got them, I actually got them from a company called Peak Candle Supply over 10 years ago. They're no longer in business, so you can't get them from there. But I've been able to find them randomly at other places too. I'd have to go back and look in details of some of the comments, because they're not all, I'm finding them in different places, and where I found them, I've left links, but I don't know where all those are off the top of my head. That being said, I will let you all know that I'm working with someone right now to make some just kind of like that I like, and I know I can get them straight from them. And so if that works out, which so far it looks like it's going to, if that works out, I'm going to have him just start making tons of them, and then I can offer them. I don't know how I'm going to offer them yet, probably on the website or something. I don't know, but I'll be making some that are very similar to those, just a tiny bit different, a little bit improvement, I think. So if you guys are looking for wick holders that are similar to those and you really like those, then stay tuned, because I'll let you know when I have some of those available. Okay, next question was from Lisa. Any way to improve cold throw with 6006? Not really. All waxes have pros and cons, obviously. Some are great with hot throw, some are great with cold throw, and some are pretty decent at both. Like a lot of your soy waxes, like 464, are so good with cold throw, and the hot throw is like really hit or miss, really. And then you got waxes like 6006 that are good at hot throw, and cold throw is like, meh. So it just depends. And then there's waxes like ProBlend 600, where both of them are just kind of in the middle of the road. But to answer your question, I would say time. It's one of the waxes that, if you make a batch and you get your lids on, you just let them sit, it will be better, but it's never going to be as good as the cold throw of some other waxes. It's just not how that wax works. Usually the best cold throw is going to come from your softer waxes, because they're so soft that the fragrance is literally, you could smell it right off the surface of the candle. Whereas some of your harder waxes kind of trap it in until it's burned and releases the fragrance in the air. So that's why you're struggling with 6006, and you're not doing anything wrong. Obviously, it's just the nature of that wax. So unfortunately, no, not a whole lot you can do. At least in my experience, I'm not the end all be all. So if someone has a suggestion, then I'm open to that, obviously. Okay. What do I recommend for AccuSoy 10 wax? Honestly, I've never used that wax. I've heard some people say they use CD and Eco Wicks, but that's all I can say. I've never used that wax myself. And I've heard mixed results, like you will with most waxes, but no, I don't know. So I would just be guessing, and I don't really want to lead someone astray on that. If there is anyone else in the comments that can answer some of these questions, though, go ahead and get back to them. Let's see. Someone, Mikey asked any question. He has a question looking for advice on wicking certain floral fragrances. He's using a gardenia from Candle Science with 6006 and using Eco and LX wicks, and he keeps getting mushroom caps. Well, for starters, a lot of waxes are just going to give you that mushroom cap more than others, and certain wicks will give it to you more than others too. And it's really about finding that balance, that combination for the right wick with the right wax, oil, and jar size. And sometimes that's just damn near impossible to get right without tweaking one thing at a time, which would be my suggestion, is try to change one of those at a time. Maybe the fragrance load. So I'm not sure what fragrance amount you're using, but if you're using something around 9 or 10%, probably back it down to 7 or 8 and see if that helps. I'm not a fan of Eco Wicks in 6006. I know Candle Science has always recommended that as their wick chart. I've never understood why. I think a lot of people don't understand that recommendation. I think it's because they just don't sell the type of wicks that do work great in that wax. That's my personal opinion. It works fine, but they just burn too hot, just too hot for me. LX wicks just tend to mushroom a little bit in general. They get the really long stalk on them so a lot of wicks, as you burn them, they either curl or they kind of start dissolving down and they stay kind of the same height. Well, LX wicks, if you've ever noticed, if you burn them a long time, the stalk on the wick, like the area of the wick below the mushroom, just keeps getting longer and longer. They almost look like little palm trees or something. So I don't use a lot of LX wicks for that reason as well, particularly with 6006. So my suggestion, Mikey, is to maybe try a different wick type. Premier 700 or an HTP wick is probably where I'd go next, and see if it helps a little bit. But it's really about sizing and fragrance load. So just play with those variables. Sharon says, wait, I have a content request. A business goal she has for 2022 is to start an in-person vendor events. Would you consider doing a series on vendor events, farmer markets, and what to keep in mind? Sharon, I have not really considered a whole series, but I did just post a video a couple of videos ago. I think it's called something like Killer Craft Shows. See if I can find it real quick and post it in the chat if someone hasn't already. But I talk a lot about my experience in that, in doing craft shows over the years and what I've changed over the years. I show some of my setup and I talk about a lot of tips. So if you haven't seen that video yet, I would definitely start there. And then if you have any questions, I think I found that video. So one sec here. So I would start with this video, and then if you still have any questions after that, then just leave them in the comments or just let me know and I'll try to do a follow-up video. But I just put that link below and hopefully that helps you out. Trying to get back to where I was here. Angel asked, do I feel like coloring my candles contributes to an increase in sales? Yes, I do. I know that everyone's got a different opinion on that. I know a lot of people that have a great business with totally natural looking candles. So I don't necessarily think that one is right or one's wrong. And I mean, I sell non-colored candles too. But for me, when I take candles to an event, the colored ones do better. Now, part of that is probably because I have more options in the colored candles, but they just stand out and people can't ignore them. Non-colored candles just tend to blend in. So unless you have something else to catch the eye and to stand out, it's hard to get that attention. Now, what I would say is you don't have to color the wax though. The jar could be colored. So if you're using different colored jars, maybe with some contrast, like behind me, you can see, I don't know how well the camera will show it, but these are just white jars. And then I have different labels on them. This is a mistletoe one and the snowflakes are green. And then I've got a cranberry fire. It's the same design, but with a different color on it as well. So anything that adds a little bit of contrast helps. So colored jars, colored labels, and in that case, you can leave the wax uncolored and no one would even notice or care. So I think it's less about colored candles as it is something that grabs attention. And in clear jars, I just think color grabs a little bit more attention, but that's just my experience. Cristobal asked if I can provide a website for provider that's outside of the US. or maybe just saying looking for providers in general. Yeah, there's several good ones. Not all of them will send overseas though. And honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know which ones do and which ones don't. But there's the very common ones like Candle Science, Nature's Garden, Flaming Candle. Those are big ones that a lot of candle makers getting started use. And then there's a few Canadian companies like Morogue Candle Supply or Morogue Fragrance Oils. There is All Seasons Wax, Luxury Candle Supply. Oh man, I'd have to think a little bit more on that and try to come up with a better list for you. But off the top of my head, those are the ones that are coming to mind. But if anyone else has any suggestions in the comments, you guys might mention that as well. Tanya asks, suggestions to prevent leaning HTP wicks besides twisting them. So she's referring, well, I'm assuming maybe referring to one of my previous videos about twisting wicks, which I would check that out if you are struggling with that because it does help. But you're not going to stop leaning wicks in general 100%. It's just as wicks get hot and they start consuming wax, especially if they get a mushroom on them, that will add some weight to that side, which will cause leaning. But also most wicks these days curl. And as they curl to that side, that adds weight to that side, which means they're going to lean a little bit as well. And then wax is soft. As it burns, the melt pool either liquefies or becomes softer. There's nothing to hold the wick up in the center perfectly. So it's going to lean a little bit. And that's the reason I twist them, is so that as it's leaning, at least it's changing the direction and it's leaning. So it can help mitigate the effect a little bit, but you're not going to really solve the problem. Unfortunately, you'll see a lot of candle companies remind their customers to recenter the wick after they blow it out. And that's to combat that reason. Now, we all know that's not going to happen. A lot of customers just aren't going to do that, and that's fine. But unfortunately, it's just not a whole lot you can do. That problem is why cored wicks are still popular, paper core wicks, zinc core wicks, because those wicks just stay dead center, which is great. I mean, I used zinc wicks forever because that was so nice. I mean, just no maintenance at all. They tend to mushroom a little bit more, but I don't know, which one do you care more about? Having a mushroom that needs trimmed off more, or a wick that continues to lean to one side, and then you've got to deal with that issue. And a lot of those wicks will still mushroom too. So I don't know. It's kind of a preference thing on what you care the most about. But unfortunately, there's not a 100% solution to leaning wicks. Carol asked if I can speak about my Shopify platform, pros and cons. Pros is that it's relatively simple to set up, even if you're not a IT person. It's pretty full functional. I mean, it's got a lot more features than a lot of your other e-commerce platforms. Squarespace, for example, I'm not a fan of really. Wicks.com, I'm not a fan of those as much. I chose Shopify because I have some background in that world, and in my experience, I liked Shopify better personally. But that's just a personal preference. Other people will like other ones better. The cons are you're not going to be able to do everything you want. And so I run into challenges sometimes where someone puts in an order and then they want to change or edit the order, or maybe they put in an order to have it shipped, but then they realize they don't need it to be shipped. They can do pickup. Well, that's an example of something they don't have a solution for. You can't really change that. So you have to kind of trick it. And then it shows like you can fulfill the order and move on, but then it shows in your reports forever that it looks like it was never shipped. It's just really little quirky things like that. It's also not the cheapest. There are cheaper options, but it is flexible. So you can kind of grow with it as you grow. So I would say there are more pros than cons though with Shopify. That's my personal experience. I think it has by far the best built-in shipping platform. So it helps you with the e-commerce shipping side a lot. You get discounts for shipping too, which is great. So that's my personal preference. All right, Thin Blue Pines. Yeah, so we've chatted before on Instagram, and she was wondering about like what I've did before candles. So what's my other, I guess, what'd she say, past life? And it's not really just a past life. I'm actually still heavily involved in this, but I came from an IT background, which ironically I'm finding that to be very common with candle makers. I don't know why. Maybe it's the attention to detail, and we like dealing with complex problems. I don't really know, but yeah. So that's what I have always done and always really, really enjoyed, and I still never stop doing that. I actually, this is kind of freak everyone out, but like I'm already extremely busy with everything that I do, running the business, trying to run the content and the channel. I've got 3 kids. I've got a very, very busy, hectic life. But what most of you probably don't know is I decided, just for the hell of it, to go back and get another degree in information systems management. So I'm doing that right now too. I'm almost done though. I've been doing that for the past couple of years. So crazy. I like staying busy, and I'm always interested in learning more and doing more. So anyways, yeah, so that's where I come from. That is what I've done most of my life. Oh, and thank you. You said you love the packaging. I appreciate that. I kind of do different packaging depending on what I'm selling or what I'm shipping, but appreciate the feedback. I got a follow-up question about why I don't prefer eco. Yeah, I just they burn so hot. I like them in certain soy waxes. I've had decent luck with them in 464, decent luck with them in a heavy soy blend called 3022 from Claris. So I've had luck with them in certain waxes. It's just the applications that I use, ecos don't work that great with them, especially low melt point waxes, because they burn so hot and the flames get really tall and wild. And a lot of you that use ecos might notice that they kind of get tall and almost kind of smoky and sooty. CD wicks do that too. But yeah, so I mean, that's the biggest reason. They just don't work with my particular applications as much. But again, it all depends on what you're using more than anything. Kathy says, you're good. I'm assuming she's talking about my video and that I'm not chopping in and out, but I appreciate it. Kathy says, what is your favorite wax or best hot throw for wax melts now? That's a good question. I don't know. I used to use ProBlend 650, which is the harder version. It's sort of like ProBlend 600, but it's 650. It's meant for wax melts. It's very similar to Pillar of Bliss, if not the same. I used that for the longest time. Thought it was good, pretty good, easy to work with, very comfortable with it. It recently was changed by the manufacturer how it's created, and I don't like the way it's acting anymore. I've noticed a little bit of a decrease in hot throw. That might be my own personal opinion though, but I don't like the way that it's firming up and settling now. It's getting really bumpy and caving in a lot more than it used to. Just strange looking tops. So I'm actually looking for a different wax melt wax. Now, back when I was blending my own, I really liked using 4625 and 6006. I don't remember exactly what ratio I was using, but start around 50-50 if you have those waxes. A lot of people love that blend and are using them. I also did just buy the new wax melt wax by Candle Science B. I don't remember what it is. I'll have to look that up as well, but I haven't tried it yet. But I am excited too because, like I said, I'm looking for something new. Have I used Soy Bliss from 1617 from Cheryl? No, not yet. They did send me some to sample and review on the channel, but I've been very backed up, so I have not had a chance to test it yet. My biggest concern is the price, but sometimes it can be worth it if it's really, really good. So we will see when I get a chance. Why don't I make pillar votive candles? So I used to, Gracie, good question. It's just a time thing for me now. They don't sell as much as my other products. So I have to prioritize right now. Believe it or not, and this is just to show my commitment to all of you guys, but I've actually gave up several products when I started the content and the channel because it became impossible to try to keep doing all of it. So I had to kind of back burner some things for now until I kind of get settled and get caught back up. Votives and pillars were kind of the first thing to go. They do fine, especially certain times of years, but I definitely will be getting back to them. I 100% plan to get back to them. But I don't really just don't really do it too much at the moment. I'm also getting into a new space, hopefully within a month. If anyone's been following me for a while, I mentioned I was getting a whole new workshop, basically building my own barn, black type barn, so to speak. And that started right when the pandemic hit. And so it kind of shut that whole process down. I was not able to move forward with that, at least yet. So it's still on the back burner. A lot of problems with that besides cost and materials and all of that. So I ended up having to look for a backup solution. which I've been doing something part-time in a little temporary workspace. I'm now about to lease out a new place that's kind of like a warehouse setup, but it's also going to have some areas for me to set up recording and candle making areas where I'm going to be working on a course for everyone, things like that. So once that I'm in there and get settled, it's going to be a lot easier for me to get back to doing more stuff that I used to. Mikey says he has great hot throw and cold throw with 6006. So yeah, that's good. I mean, if Mikey wants to provide some tips on how he gets good cold throw, and I should say 6006 isn't terrible with cold throw. It just depends on the fragrance oil. I've got some that when you open it up, you're like, whoa, that's too much. And then you got others that they don't smell as strong as others. Jars that are more narrow, this is going to sound contradictory, but jars that are more narrow are going to have better cold throw because the fragrance is kind of contained in a smaller area inside the jar. So when you take off the lid, it's going to be pretty powerful. Jars that are wider, 3-wick jars, the hot throw on those are awesome, but the cold throw is usually weaker because there's more just natural evaporation right into the air. There's just more open air for the fragrance. It's harder to detect the cold throw. But that's not true for all waxes. So it just kind of depends. Let's see. On C3, have I used hemp wicks? No, I have not used hemp. Well, I've used hemp wicks before. I don't remember what wax it was in. I was not a fan, so I just never used them again. But that doesn't mean they're not good. They might work great with some wicks or waxes. I honestly don't know. I should probably tinker with them again. It's been years. Best wick for joy wax in general. That's from Royette, I think. For me, if I had to say 2 wicks to start with, I would say Premier 700 and HDP. It's probably where I'd start. And then just dial in the wick size for those. And then once you feel comfortable with those, if you want to start experiment with potential other ones that might work as well, then go that route. But for me, I use mostly Premier 700 and HDP wicks in my in that wax. Let's see. What size and brand are my new vessels? Are you talking about, that's from Jag. Are you talking about these ones back here? These are my Woodwick candles. So they're not necessarily new. I just don't have them on my website yet. Yeah, that's probably not smart, but they make about 10-ounce candles. So they hold about 10 ounce worth of wax, but they're somewhere around 13.5-ounce jars. Some of them behind me came from Aztec Candle Supply. I just really like the look of them a lot. I'm not a huge fan of the lids. They look good, but you kind of have to put on the silicone yourself, and they actually come with a funny smell because of the silicone, and so you just got to let them air out a little while. So I'm not a huge fan of the lids. And they just jacked up the prices on those jars significantly, again, because of supply chain issues. So fortunately, I have a ton of them, but I think that's what you're asking about. If you need further information on that, just let me know. Yeah, it's as Steve mentioned, Joy Wax and Problend 600 are nearly identical. From all indications, they are made from the same manufacturer. It's just a different company selling it with a new name. I'm sure there's NDAs out there, so I don't want to say 100% that is true, but that's everything I've ever heard. So let's see. Ecos smoke fast in 6006. Very true. It's one of the reasons I do not use them. What would I suggest to buy to start testing wood wicks? Patience. If you can buy patience, I would start with that. They are finicky wicks. They're gorgeous, and when you wick it perfectly, they are great candles. They can be finicky to work with. So what I would do is figure out your wax and your jar, and I would start by going to their website, Wooden Wick Company's website, and using their wick sizing chart, and just see what they recommend, and then buy a sample pack of a lot of different wicks in that kind of zone or whatever. So that's what I did years ago, and I just kept tinkering around and playing. You know, what you'll find with wood wicks is you'll find a lot of wicks that tend to work, but some just work better than the others. So I just keep testing and wood wicks require a lot of testing, and you just got to be patient with them, and also realize that because they're such a natural product, they don't work exactly the same candle to candle. You can make a batch of 8 candles and 6 of them might be burned perfectly, and then one might seem underwicked, the other one seem overwicked. It's just the nature of using those products. So patience is the biggest thing, and then I would start with sample packs. Joe asked if I had tested HTP 72 and is there a big difference with 73? Well, now seeing both those numbers, now I'm confused on which one I've been using. I'm pretty sure I've been using 73. So I doubt there is. I honestly didn't realize there was there was 2 wicks with that close of a number. Usually that's, 52, 62, 73, 83, 93. So I guess I didn't even realize that there was another one. So I probably have not tested that. Michelle asked, to prevent frosting and wax melts, do you pour at a lower temp? I'm currently pouring at 145, but I've been getting frosting all of a sudden. Michelle, I don't know what wax you're using, but if you're using a wax that's heavy in soy, it doesn't really matter, unfortunately. You might prevent it at first, but eventually that frosting is going to come back most likely at some point. And different pour temps may accelerate it or hold it off depending on the container and the wax you're using. But over time, if frosting is going to happen, it's going to happen, unless you do something with like organically to prevent it. So you'd have to do something with the ingredients to prevent it. The pour temp is not going to fend it off forever. And with wax melt, that's tough because some people will add paraffin or coconut oil or something like that, but you don't want to do that to wax melts because it just makes them too soft. So, but you could use a hard paraffin wax. So if you're not opposed to that, I would mix in a hard paraffin pillar wax. If you want to keep it 100% soy, then you probably just have to make sure customers know that it's normal for those to do that. As far as the pour temp, though, I generally pour all my wax melts around 140 or so. It just keeps them from hardening too fast, but also too slowly, where you don't want to pour too hot where it has a lot more room to shrink as they cool. Would I use HTP or Premier 700 with IGI 6046 paraffin coconut wax? Honestly, those are the two that I would start with. I don't know that I could pick one without testing them both. Coconut paraffin wax is like both those wicks. You may even try a CDN wick too, depending on how much coconut's in it. But I would probably make I have got a testing video where I talk about this a little bit, but if you have a decent idea of the right size, what I would do is probably start with 4 or 6 candles and do 2 or 3 sizes of each one of those wicks. And then that should give you a pretty good indication of which one tends to work a little bit better for you. And then going forward, you could stick with that one. That would be my suggestion. You're welcome, Sharon. And I went too quickly. Hi, Tracy from Australia. Okay, so Renee's got a quick question here. She's been using 6006 for years, considering switching waxes. Man, all this talking is making my throat go out already. But she doesn't want to have to cure for 2 weeks. Any suggestions? She's already picked her favorite vessel, but 6006 is not being nice in that vessel. Well, first of all, that's a good strategy, in my personal opinion. If you know what vessel you want to work and your wax simply isn't working in that vessel, and that vessel is the most important thing to you, then don't try to force the wax to work. Move on unless you're already committed to that wax. As far as not having to cure for 2 weeks, this really comes down to a question of, do you make your candles to order or do you make your candles and stock them? So for example, behind me, these are a bunch of candles that I've made and stocked. And then as I sell them and they get lower, I refill them and they're available. So if that's what you're doing, then I wouldn't worry about the 2-week cure time, because they're going to be sitting on your shelf at least a few days or more, sometimes weeks and months. And then even if you were to make them fresh, by the time they've sat there a couple days and then you pack and ship them, and then delivery time, and then by the time the customer actually burns it, you're probably already at least another week or even 2 already into the cure time. So I do think people worry a little bit too much about the 2-week cure time, especially if you're making your candles to stock them like this. If you make your candles to order, every single order, then I understand that hesitation. And it's also one of the reasons I don't like waxes that have a really long cure time. So the obvious suggestion is don't choose a wax with a long cure time. But that can be difficult because if that's not the most important thing to you and you like everything else about a wax, I wouldn't let that stop you. As far as a wax to try, though, if you haven't tried already, would be something like a ProBlend 600, for example. It's not going to have as good of hot throw on many oils as 6006 would, but it does better than a lot of other waxes. I would say it's right in the middle. I sell a lot of candles with ProBlend 600, a lot of them. I've never really had issues. I think many of you have probably tried some of my candles. Some oils are stronger than others for sure, but they're somewhere in the middle of the road. And you can run a successful candle company having an average scented candle, average strength. You don't need to knock everyone's socks off with a candle. Some people don't want them to be that strong. What I think is more importantly is you let customers know that certain size candles work better in certain size rooms. So a candle like these Masons behind me or these ones down here, they are great for small and middle size rooms. But if you burn one in a huge open area, some scents might work great and others won't. So anyways, I kind of went on a ramble there. I would say try 600, ProBlend 600 first if you haven't already. There are a lot of other waxes to try, to be honest, but I'm just throwing that one out there because I know a lot about it. And it does have pretty good cold throw as well. So it's a good in the middle wax, and it's pretty easy to work with too. Definitely easier than 6006. So that'd be a recommendation for me. What series and size wicks do I recommend for a 7-ounce candle made with 100% soy wax, 10% fragrance load, and a glass with 2.5-inch diameter? Well, that's from Kathy. First of all, thanks for all the information. That does make it a lot easier with all those specifics. The one thing that I don't really know is the 100% soy wax. There's a lot of waxes that are 100% soy wax, and no soy is the same. They're all very different. There are soy waxes that have higher melt points and very tough to wick, and there's other ones that are easier to wick. So without knowing the specific wax, I can't really give you a firm answer, but I would say I'd probably start with somewhere like, I don't know, probably a CD series is where I'd start. It just tends to work good with soy wax. And then, I don't know, probably a CD 10. But I don't know what the melt point of your wax is. If it's a really low melt point, you might want to go down a size. If it's a larger or higher melt point, you might want to go up a size. It just depends. Gracie says she's trying to blend 444 wax with 4627. What would be a good ratio? Depends what you're going for. 4627 is a super soft, greasy Vaseline wax with excellent hot throw, maybe the best hot throw on the market. 444 does not have the greatest hot throw, but it's soy based. So I'm assuming you're just trying to come up with a good pair of soy to work with. And it's a higher melt point soy. I don't really know what you're going for. Are you going for a certain texture or certain fragrance strength or easier wicking? I don't really know, but I tend to do everything with all blends, and that's start with a 50-50 and adjust from there. You usually have an idea if you do that, which one you need to add more or less of, but that's probably where I'd start. What's an easy, user-friendly platform to make a website to sell candles? Well, I touched on this earlier. I mean, it depends. It depends on, I guess, how quickly you want to get set up and how much work you want to put into it. The easiest platform to start on by far is Etsy. I've never been a huge fan of Etsy, though, because of fees, and they've just had some questionable ethical things that have done in the past, and they can also randomly shut your business down at any point, and you don't own anything on Etsy. You're just a marketplace. Consider it like you're renting a space, but it's very easy. A lot of people make great businesses on there. It's much less work. It's very quick to get started. A lot of pros. And then the other route that I would suggest if you want to run your own e-commerce site, as we talked about with Shopify, I don't want to get into a lot more right now because I talked a lot about it earlier, but it's very powerful. You control a lot more of it. You can do a lot more. It takes some more work and some more time to get set up, but it's just more flexible. So it just all depends on what you want to do. How much time do you have to invest, and how much work do you want to do? Let's see. CDN wicks for the cocoa paraffin. Chandra said, yeah, that's a great suggestion. I don't remember if I mentioned that before. I think I said Premier and HTP, but yes, excuse me. Any wax that's heavy in coconut, CDN wicks work pretty well. Edwin asked an interesting question, and that is, do you find wooden wicks require less testing since there are fewer variations? They're more of kind of a one size fits all when it comes to wax and vessels. So I did kind of touch on this earlier that you'll find a lot of wood wicks that do just get the job done. The problem is some get the job done better than others, and if you don't test enough, you might not find out which is the best wick. And so it just depends. Are you just want to quickly get a candle tested and call it good and out the door, or do you want to try to make it the best you can? You'll have to do more testing in that regard for wooden wicks. The biggest struggle with wooden wicks and testing is their inconsistencies. So they're very finicky, as we talked about earlier. But you are right. Um, Generally speaking, once you find a wooden wick that works with your wax and a jar size, oils don't affect them as much as they can cotton wicks, at least in my experience. Have I ever tried making candles in tins? I'm worried about tins overheating. That was a question by Abby. That's a good question because a lot of people start with tins. They're cheap, they're light, they're small, they're easy to get started with. Yes, I have made candle tins before, but I don't make any anymore. I'll probably add them back, but to answer your question, yes, I have used them, and you've got a good point. You got to be careful wicking tins because they do hold heat a lot more, and the melt pool can get completely liquefied much faster, and the tin can get much hotter quicker. So sometimes you'll find that even with the same diameter as a glass jar, you might find that you end up need one size wick smaller on a tin for that very reason. So what I would say is if you work with a lot of different glass jars and they all have the same diameter, you can pretty much rely on if you've tested one, it's going to work in the other one, right? I would not assume that if you're switching to tens, just because it's a different material and they do behave a little bit differently. But I agree with Steve there about not not just the wood wicks, but also tens. That I would always make testing an important part of your process, regardless. And so whether you switch from glass to tens or from cotton wicks to wood wicks, I would always just keep testing as a priority. Amy May asked, she says she's a ceramic artist who would like to create unique hand sculpted and wheel thrown candle containers. As a complete beginner at candle making, I'm wondering about wax and wicks to get started. You got me. I have no idea on the wicks. I mean, for a wax, I think you would probably start with a sculpting type of paraffin wax, which would be like some beeswaxes or some hard paraffin waxes, 4625s, 4620, 46. I can't remember. I have to look, but there's some sculpting waxes designed specifically for that purpose. So I would look there, but that's definitely not more my forte, unfortunately. So I can't help you much there. Sorry about that. How much soot do I consider appropriate? Towards the end of the burn, if you get a little bit of a shadow or black around the edges or the sides, is that okay? It's fine. It's fine. You would rather the jar catch it than it just go into the air anyways, right? So it's the shape of your jar will also, if your jar has shoulders, it's going to catch more of that anyways, just naturally. Plus it's, it's a fuel burning in a jar. So you can do your best to make everything perfect, but you can't control everything. It's a combustion process. There's a lot of variables, drafts. If the wick flickers, you might get kicks of soot and stuff like that. It's not a big deal. What you want to avoid is excessive sooting and wick, where you're seeing your wick dance all over the place, and you can see it literally shooting puffs of black into the air. That indicates a problem with your combination of materials, your recipe. So, but yeah, just a little bit is completely fine. I mean, I have a lot of candles that will do that by the very bottom. It's totally normal. Let's see. A lot of people are responding to others in this, so this is great. Everyone's really being helpful here. Hey, Mystique. Yes, I have used Pillar of Bliss. I talked about that earlier. It's like Provolone 650 granular form, but unfortunately, it's changed recently. Now they still might have batches of the old style, but supposedly all the new batches the manufacturers are creating are coming in this new kind of pellety form that I have not liked the way it finishes anymore. Danielle asked if I've done massage candles with Coconut 83. I did massage candles the very first year I ever made candles just to try it for fun. I don't know that I'll ever make massage candles again. I don't know that there's a large enough market for me to try to sell them. Um, and to me, it's just a personal thing, but to me, it just wasn't worth the effort. Like, I'd rather just use oil. If I'm going to get a massage, just give me some oil. I don't really want to have to light a candle and wait for it to melt down. And I don't know. That's just me. But I know people that make massage candles and they're great. It's just not my thing. So I did make some before. I don't think it was Coconut 83 because I didn't know about Coconut 83 back then. Claire, referring to one of my videos, Candle Millionaire videos. It's funny. Do I recommend packing with ice packs and insulation for candles so they don't melt? Jaden, that's a really good question, and I'm actually still up in the air on that. During the summer, I used to occasionally, if I knew it was going somewhere hot and it might be there for several days, I would take gel packs. I would use gel over ice. So if you go to Uline, get gel packs. They don't condensate as much as ice packs do. And I think they last a little bit longer too. But they still will sweat. And I don't want that causing an issue in the box, either making the box wet or having to add other packaging so your products don't get kind of wet, boxes or something inside. The other problem for me is they only really kept things cool for like up to a day. And that doesn't help me a whole lot because I'm worried about them sitting in a truck for days, plural, in 100+ degree weather. So I don't know how much it helps. I don't know that it hurts, but I don't know how much it actually helps. What I have done instead, and this isn't specific to pillar candles, but I have shipped candles with that silver reflective bubble wrap, which I never got any complaints from any of my customers that the candles showed up melted. So I'm assuming it worked, but I don't know. I probably should have packaged one myself and just let it sit outside in the 100-degree weather to see what happened. But I liked that route a little bit better personally. Robin, I do not have any experience with TW30 wax, but I know some people do, and I've heard mixed results just like I do about every wax. So, but no, I haven't used it myself, but I would love to find out how you like it if you use it, because again, as I mentioned, I'm also looking for potentially for a new wax melt wax. Maria asks, what's the best wick for beeswax candles? I don't make beeswax candles, so I'm sorry I can't answer that really well. But what I'll say is a lot of people use square braid wicks for beeswax. But I don't know if you're talking about a container or a pillar. But square braid, I know, really does good with beeswax. Other than that, I'm not sure. Oh, Steve says, Robin, he does use TW30 and highly recommends it. There you go. So Alyssa there with Thin Blue Pines just said, thanks for answering my question. Busy hands are good. Congrats on the new degree. Thank you. So I'm going to keep going down these questions, but real quick, we got started late, so I definitely am planning on going later than right now. I'll probably run this to about 8 o'clock for anyone who wants to stick around. So that'd be about an hour and 15 minutes since we started around 6:45. So just to let you know, probably another 20 to 25 minutes, only because I got stuff to do. So also let me know, by the way, it doesn't have to be in here. It can be when the video's over or whatever. This will be posted on the channel as a recorded version. So if you need to go back to it, you can, but also let me know in the comments here or there, wherever, if you liked doing this and if you want to do these more often. At the end of this, I'm going to talk about a few things I'm working on that kind of ties into that as well. Brian and KC asked, does temperature that you pour into your jars or the temperature that you add the fragrance really matter for a good hot throw? That's a very, very controversial topic. Um, most candle makers that have been doing it for a long time will tell you no, and just to stick to a process that works for you. Because even if it does make a difference, it's very minuscule and almost unnoticeable. However, there are others that swear that it makes a difference for them. And I can't tell someone that that's not true, because if they notice a difference, I can't tell them that is not, that they're not right. They might actually notice a difference just because I don't. So some people say that, really this comes down to soy wax. That's the wax that people really have a debate about. Should you add it at low temperature? Should you add it at super high temperature? Somewhere in the middle. Most manufacturers of these waxes will tell you to add the wax hotter, around 180 to 190 degrees. The reason is you want it to be able to blend well enough with your wax. You run the risk of separation and other issues if you don't. Others say that if you add the oil lower temperature, that you will have better cold throw. I've got a theory on that, and some of us will disagree for sure, but I worry that you're getting a better cold throw by adding your wax or your fragrance at a lower temperature, because it's not binding in the wax. It's actually sitting outside of the wax, sometimes on the side, sometimes actually on the top, and that's why you get such great cold throw. But that's not great. That's not something you want. That creates problems for wicking and burning, and potentially dangerous. A lot of people, especially if they come from the soap making world, will say, well, I add fragrance oil at low temperatures with soap all the time. But soap's very different. Soap and wax, soap base and waxes are totally different products. They're made up entirely different. Wax contracts and expands. It's made up of all these little molecules working together, and they open up and basically expand to let ingredients in, and then they firm back up. And then as you burn, it releases it. It's very different than soap making. So I would say, as a personal recommendation, and then you can take this advice and then test on your own any changes. But for me personally, I just follow what the manufacturers recommend. And then I will make small adjustments if I need to. But that's my personal preference. The thing that I care more about with pour temperature is how much work I have to do after I pour the candle. I'm trying to minimize that. As you scale up and you start making more and more products, you want to limit the amount of touch up you have to do. Poking holes, using heat guns, all of that stuff takes time, and it really hinders you later as you scale up. So the best way to limit those problems is your pour temperature, and it will vary by your wax. It's going to be different for all waxes. Some waxes want to be poured extremely hot, some very cool, and some right in the middle. I want, with waxes that shrink a little bit, 6006, Provolone 600, soy waxes, whatever. There's a lot of waxes out there that do that. Finding that pour temperature that's low enough where you still get, you don't get any cracking, it doesn't cool too quickly, but also low enough where it's not going to shrink too much. And so that'll give you nice smooth tops. For example, and it will vary by your jar too, but these masons here and these jars down here, when I'm using Provolone 600, I use, I usually pour somewhere around 150 to 155, which is actually lower than what suppliers recommend. They usually say somewhere around 160, 165. But that's just because I started with that and then tweaked it a little bit and came up with these. And I don't know if it's going to show in here, but I get really smooth, good tops here. I don't know if I can find something here. And I don't touch any of these up. So this is what they look like after the fact. But the reason I say it depends on your jar is because taller jars will shrink more on the top, and wider jars will shrink less. So you have to generally do more touch up with odd shaped or tall, skinny jars, things like that. So experiment with your jar and figure out what pour temp tends to help you the best. But I went on a tangent there again. I don't think it affects hot throw that much, to be honest. You're welcome, Renee. What are my thoughts on coconut soy wax? I've only used a couple, and so far I haven't been a huge fan of it. I definitely need to do a lot more testing with them, though, and I've got some new ones to test. But in my experience, I haven't really liked them. I still prefer parasoy over coconut soy, but that might change if you ask me again in a couple months. Let's see. Hey, Jody. Do I do my own product photography? Yes, which is why it's not always great. When I take my time and use all my resources, I can do good work. But when I'm trying to get something up just quick, I just do something average just to get something up, and then I'll go back and do it later. It is definitely something I need to be delegating. I've thought about it forever. I really need to just hire that out, to be honest. Um, Says Tyler says he has great success with C6 Wax and Eco Wicks. So there you go. I've not tried that yet, so that's a good recommendation. How do I get my colors so vibrant? Testing, experimenting. I Every time I make test candles, I always use color because it's a good opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. So I like to see what color combinations I come up with. I've got every single color that Candle Science sells. I have every single color that Nature's Garden sells, and I just have fun with it. It can be messy, but it's one of my favorite parts is coming up with different colors and different hues. So I might have 7, 10 different browns, but they all look slightly different, which is fun. So but as far as vibrant, just experimentation. Some waxes will be more vibrant than others as well. So certain soys are not going to be as vibrant as certain paraffins or parasoys. It just depends. Some waxes are a little bit more translucent and some are a little bit more opaque. So just experimenting and combination of ingredients. Have I ever had a wick come unstuck while burning? If so, how do you make it stop for good? Well, if it happens after the candle's already made and your candle's already burning, you can't really fix it. I mean, not without making a mess of your candle. Um, but the best thing is preventative in that case. And I know a lot of people struggle with wick stickers saying that they don't stick and they pop up. I use wick stickers all the time and I just don't have that problem myself, but I have in the past and occasionally. And it's usually the result of the bottom of the wick sticker being like kind of damaged or not clean, the bottom of the jar not being clean, or sometimes people just put in wicks very quickly and move on. You really want to make sure that wick is really smashed down and kind of push down on all sides of it. And I just don't have any problems with that. If you pour your wax incredibly hot, like coconut or palm candles, where you pour it like 200 degrees, that may affect it, but I don't know. I don't make any of those candles. But yeah, if you get a wick that comes unstuck while it's burning, there's just not a whole lot you can do, to be honest. Let's see. Dana asked if a lot of these other fancy sounding waxes are a lot more expensive. Coconut soy, para, coconut, apricot. Apricot, yes, is a little bit more expensive. All the other waxes, they're not really any more expensive than your standard soys or parasoys or paraffins. Some are. It depends where you're getting it and what type of blend you're getting, because those are generic terms. Coconut soy, coconut paraffin, those are generic terms, blends, but there are specific ones that are more expensive and specific ones that are less expensive. Unfortunately, we all know that right now, all of it's really expensive. So I don't know that you're going to find anything that's great at the moment. Let's see. Have I ever ordered vessels from AliExpress and was it worth it? In the past, yes, I would say it's worth it if you're doing a large volume, 10,000 jars at a time, stuff like that. It was worth it. By the time the jar's price is like anywhere from 5 cents to 10 cents a jar, it's next to nothing. And then even with shipping, yes, it took a while, a couple months to get your products, but it was just much less expensive to go that route. The problem is that's not the case right now. There's really no benefit at the moment to be buying overseas over with Alibaba or AliExpress. It takes incredibly long. The ports are backed up, so it's taking longer than normal. The cost per unit is still really good, but shipping costs have gone up a lot. So, for example, I was just trying to prepare to buy about 10,000 units myself, and I ended up buying them locally because they were barely any cheaper overseas. In the past, it used to be significantly cheaper. This time, it was barely cheaper, and barely cheaper combined with a much longer wait time is not worth it to me. So, hope that answers your question. It just depends. At this very moment, no. Have I considered hiring an employee and getting a factory? So I've had employees come and go, sometimes seasonal, sometimes for different part-time help. I do have someone currently working with me Things are kind of crazy right now. So, we're kind of waiting to get resettled and back into the new place, the new warehouse. I don't know that I would call it a factory so much, but trying to get back into that. Once I get settled, yes, I will be getting back to hiring some help. So what state am I in? Kathy asked. I am in Missouri. So I'm in the Kansas City, Missouri area. Tiana said that she would love to continue doing this. Cool. Thank you. Do I feel it's better to start off as a sole proprietor or an LLC? It's up to you. I would say most importantly is get insurance first. Because the others are business structures, and it really just depends. If you're serious about it and you're going to do it for a while, you're going to eventually move away from sole proprietor. But it's fine to start that way if you want, and it's easy to go from a sole proprietor to an LLC. So if you want to just start that way because it's easier, totally fine. I'm an LLC. There are arguments that I could be an S corp. I've battled that for years. There are some definite disadvantages to do an S corp. Mostly all the requirements you got to do, and I just don't have time to deal with them. Having certain meetings and minutes and all this junk, I don't want to deal with at the moment, but I'll probably eventually go that route too. I do agree with Michael though, for tax purposes, legal purposes, some protection of your liabilities and assets, LLC is better from the sole proprietor. So I guess I should have been more clear about that. I do believe an LLC is better, but I don't think it's necessary starting off. I do think you can eventually get to that if you want to, but I don't think if someone says you absolutely have to start an LLC from day one, that's not true. But there are advantages to doing it. Lisa, good point. Manufacturers spend a bunch of money. They spend millions of dollars with product development, testing. They want to make a product that works for customers so they can stay in business. So why not use their recommendations? Couldn't agree more. You can definitely tweak it because things will change, your jar, your fragrances, your wicks, whatever, but it's a good starting point. Let's see. Any advice or tips for starting a fundraiser during spring and summer? Sean, that's a good question. That's going to be a pretty long conversation. My tip and advice for now is start planning early, so you're not rushing and you got all your ducks in a row well in advance. And then also stay tuned. I know you're already part of this channel, but stick around because I do plan on a video and some content to help other people with a fundraiser. I've done some personal fundraisers. If you all remember one I did previously for my sister, which many of you are part of, so I appreciate that very much. But yeah, I will get more into that for sure when I get a chance. Michael says they pour a couple hundred candles a day and find that pouring via supplier recommendations and insulating them during setup time is most important for smooth tops. Also, very much agree. If you can insulate several candles at one time, that's a great option. It becomes sometimes hard to do that if you don't have the space or the materials to insulate. And by insulating, put in a box, cover it with a blanket, put in something enclosed where you can have some temperature control. Temperature control is really like environment control is the best thing you can do. You want to minimize drafts. You want to keep a consistent room temperature. That will really help on cosmetic issues as well. So good point. How much do I factor in that customers aren't going to trim their wicks? Okay, so the first important thing is to make sure your candle burns properly if they trim them properly. Once you get that dialed in, then see if you can make your candle also perform well if they don't trim properly. So stick with the first one first, and then start seeing, can I keep a good normal burning candle to continue to burn well by making a few changes to the size, for example, the wick, that can also prevent candle abuse from causing a problem. So I hope I answered that. I feel like that was a weird tongue twister, but focus on properly burning candle first, properly trimmed candles, then try to improve them for power burned candles. And on that note, the first burn or two is usually the one that's going to get it's hard to decide everything from the first burn. So I have a lot of candles. One of my most popular candles that a lot of people buy, and I think a lot of you have actually, is this crackling birch candle. There's a ton of examples of these, but that first candle will not burn like anything special. It will get a mushroom on it. It not crazy, but if you let it burn for 4, 5, 6 hours, it get a little bit of a mushroom on it, and you're like, all right, cool, that's going to be a standard candle. Then once you trim that, I usually don't have to trim that candle again the rest of the way. And that is from extensive testing of trying to get certain candles to burn a certain way. Now, I'm saying that, and I'm probably just like embarrassing myself right now because some of you are probably, I've used that candle. It didn't burn that great. I don't know. But I work on my candles to try to have them burn the best they can overall. That doesn't mean that every burn cycle is going to be perfect. There are going to be times you got to trim the wick. There are going to be times where the wicks get a little bit big. It's not going to be perfect start to finish, but just try to make them the best you can. La, 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 la. Robin asked if I add color first or FO first when I color your candles. It depends on the temperature by the time I get to it. So if I'm working really quickly because I wasn't paying attention to the temperature well enough and temperature is dropping on me quickly, I color. You want to make sure your color, make sure fragrance gets incorporated. So generally speaking, I will add color first just because I get it in first when wax is really hot. Same with any other additives. If you're using UV inhibitor or Vibar or anything else, get those in first, then try to get your fragrance in around 100, 185 or whatever. But if you've missed some of those targets, then just do your best to try to get it caught up. And I would lean on the side of trying to get your fragrance oil in, so it definitely has a chance to disperse through the blend, because most liquid dye is pretty easy to incorporate. If you're using dyed chips, you want to make sure you add those hotter. Vanessa asked the best play to buy candle jars in bulk. Really depends. Right now, wherever you can get them, that's the best answer. Just like everything else, been hit by supply chain shortages. So you just have to find a lot of suppliers that you can source your jars from. I don't know that there is a best in bulk. I would say that if check out Fillmore or SKS Bottling, because if they have jars that work for you, they tend to keep more in stock than standard candle suppliers. So check out Fillmore Container, SKS, if you haven't already. Miriam, you're welcome. No problem at all. Carol says, thanks, neighbor. Go Chiefs. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. All right. Dana asks, what's my favorite FO supplier? Again, I don't have one. I use fragrances from so many different companies. What I have found is that every company's got good fragrance oils and bad fragrance oils. So I would say go with what makes sense for you. Limit your suppliers early on would be my suggestion. Especially if you can find some that are local, that's even better, because you're going to find good and bad ones no matter where you go. That's my personal observation so far. Any special tool machinery to make manufacturing easier when you're starting the business? I would avoid anything like that. That's too heavy an investment when you're first starting your business. But yes, there are things that can make things better. Filling machines, wax tanks, and then early on you could use like a Presto pot or something like that kind of serves like a small melting tank. Infrared thermometer is good. When you're using those, make sure you give the wax a stir before you read the temperature, because it measures the surface, but it's just very quick results. I've got a video called Candle Maker Supplies or something. It's one of the first videos I ever did last year. So if you go to the video section on the channel and scroll through it, or if someone has a link handy, you can post it. But don't judge the video too harshly. It's one of my first ever videos, but I mentioned a lot of good starting tools and supplies to help someone just kind of getting started, if that video helps. Any insurance company recommendations? I'm not an insurance expert, but the one thing you should definitely ask any insurance company is if they will cover candles specifically. If they say not specifically, but yeah, we'll cover it, or they don't, then don't go with that company. And also make sure your insurance covers product liability, not just general business insurance. So Handcrafters Guild, Handcrafter and Soap Guild, I think it's HSGC or CG or something like that. I've got another video about taking your candle hobby to a business. Also one of my first ever videos, maybe my first ever video, where I mention these insurance companies. I use Indie Business Network. Not that it's better than the others. I've just had them for a long time, but you join the network first for an annual fee, and then you get the insurance policy as part of, you can get that after becoming a member. The total cost of it ends up being the same as a general insurance policy, or any other insurance policy. And then a lot of people use Liberty Mutual. I can't verify that they cover candles, but a lot of people say they do, and they seem to be a good company. See. Yeah, someone just mentioned Liberty Mutual. All right, guys. So I'm going to finish the questions that are on the screen now. There's just a couple left, and then I want to get to a few comments before I go, just because it's going on. Yeah, and it looks like Michael just mentioned HSGC, which is the Handcrafter Soap and Candle Guild, I believe is what it stands for. Don says I skipped them twice. Sorry, Don. I'm not trying to do that. Let me go back and see where you had a question. It is just this chat screen gets filled up quickly, and I'm trying to chat and look and read the comments at the same time. So my mistake. Okay. It looks, the only one I'm seeing is, if you think, do I think the cure time between smaller and larger candles is different? In the sense that a larger candle has more wax, it's going to take longer to obviously firm up. Then one would argue it could take a little bit longer to cure as well. But I don't think it's anything significant. I mean, 2 weeks is going to be plenty long enough for a 10-ounce candle as it would a 7-ounce candle. So I wouldn't necessarily change your cure time practice because of that. But yeah, I mean, I think arguably you could probably say there's a few extra hours or maybe days. Anyway, sorry, Don. I didn't mean to skip you. It's a lot of chats going on. Thanks for being patient, though. Okay, so it looks like I think I got through all the candles. Someone asked what I think about beeswax. I mentioned that earlier. I don't use it, so I can't really speak to it, unfortunately. I want to wrap up a few things here, because I think I got through everything. I'm so sorry if I missed anyone. If I did, just let me know in the comments after the video is posted. I will get back with you. I really, really will try. I apologize if I missed anyone. I was actually surprised we kept up like we did. I think we got most of them. Okay, so a couple things I wanted to mention. I have been talking about for a couple months now that I'm working on a few new resources. I am working on a new website that is sort of like a all-in-one kind of resource / helpful article, like blog / tips and tricks, tools, some links, digital resources as well. It's going to have a lot of things. Think of it as kind of like an all-in-one one-stop shop for candle makers. So it's not going to be the same as my website where I sell my products. Obviously, it's going to be something new. I'm trying to decide. I'm like a nerd in too particular about names. Like if you're on a Facebook group, you probably asked me or seen me ask about different names. I have such a hard time deciding those things sometimes. So I've ended up buying like 9 different domain names right now because I can't figure out which one I want to go with, and I don't want someone to take it. So I'm still trying to figure that out. And I know it sounds silly, but I'm trying to make sure that everything makes sense. And I don't want everything to link together and make sense for everyone. So when that is done, I will definitely let everyone know. And of course, all that content is still free. It's just like this channel. It's just some of it will be in written form. There will be links to resources, tools. If there is anything that does take either some of my own like money or time to create or sell, then there might be some links to things for purchase. I don't even know what that would be at this moment, to be honest. But I'm just, long story short, it's going to be an all-in-one website to help all of you out and help all of us out. And then I have started a newsletter sign up. There's no newsletter yet, but it's been in the video. That's going to be tied to that new website a little bit as well. So once that website's up, you can also join it from there. But it's just another way for me to reach out and let you know interesting things I find out, new tips and tricks, without necessarily having to just post a video and wait for all of you to find the video, because it doesn't always happen. I do plan on some courses coming up. I've been asked about that for years, and I just haven't had the time, and I'm waiting probably till I get the new place done. If I go that route, there will be a few different options, and of course I will make them very affordable, so anyone that's interested in doing it can do it, because there's only so much I can do in a YouTube channel. It's hard without really designing an entire start from scratch till finish, um, to really help take someone through everything start to finish, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It'll be a lot easier to do with some type of course or something. So and my hope is that I get some sponsors for that course from St. Pliers and others to help pay for that, so that I could offer it even cheaper. So I'm always thinking about you guys, just so you know. I'm always thinking about what can I give them, how can I help other people without having to ask for money, because that's why I started this channel, right? Um, anything else that I have going on new? I can't think of anything right now. Couple last minute questions here. If anyone that's still sticking around, Destiny asked if I could speak about 4627. Steve pretty much summed it up. It's amazing hot throw, but very messy to use. So test a small sample of it, see if it's something you even want to deal with. And if it is, it can be a great wax, but it is a messy, messy wax. Is there a cheaper way to protect your business name before affording a trademark? You can protect it in your own state by filing a fictitious name. But other than that, no, not really. Not that I know of anyways. But a fictitious name's like $7 or something. I'm going to need a VA to help with everything. Carol, you are not wrong. I have some trying to, I've had some people offer to help. The problem is I don't even know. There's just like too many things I need help with at this point. So, I think we got everything. Scented Expression says, I missed it. Oh no, don't worry. It's not going anywhere. You can watch the recorded version. It's going to be I assume posted right after this is over. So thank you all very much. Please give this a thumbs up. I appreciate you guys helping get this channel to where it is to this point. I can make videos all I want, but if no one watches them, it doesn't really matter. And so the more you guys thumbs up the videos, the more you all, give them likes or share them or comment, that all helps the channel grow. And my intention is the channel to keep growing so I can keep giving more. So the support really, really does make a difference. It really, really helps. So I appreciate it a lot. Thank you all for being here. It looks like you guys enjoyed this. I hope you did. Looks like everyone wants to continue doing more, so we will plan on doing that for sure. Other than that, you guys are awesome. And I will see you all next time. And I'm sure I'll be engaging with you back on the comments of this actual video shortly as well. So I will have another video coming out, normal video coming out next week is my plan. So tune in for that one. Thank you all. And have a good rest of the night. Thanks, Steve, for helping out. Big shout out to Steve for helping keep an eye on the chat. So yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. If you're not already part of the Facebook group, by the way, or that email newsletter, go ahead and join it. It'll be easier to keep up with you all. So, all right, guys, have a good night and see you later.